Of all the gaming franchises, there's never been one quite as tumultuous as Sonic the Hedgehog. Once Sega's rival to Nintendo's Mario, Sonic has starred in some of the best and worst in video games. This year in particular marks a special year for Sonic with the release of 2 games, a big-budget AAA epic and a return to what makes the series so beloved. But when it comes to Sonic, practically every year in its 26-year-long history has been filled with interesting stories, and we're going to take a look at as much as we can. Welcome to History Of. For the next several months, we're going to be doing a brand new video every 2 weeks, and we're starting with Sonic the Hedgehog.
Sega challenges you with the ultimate video game, the Sega Master System.
The mid-90s saw the rise of the home video game consoles, and with it the start of a bitter rivalry between companies Nintendo and Sega. Nintendo dominated the market during the 18-bit era with the Famicom, or Nintendo Entertainment System as it's known here in North America. Sega's competing console, called the Sega Mark III in Japan and the Sega Master System here in North America, was unable to topple Nintendo. Not ready to give up, Sega doubled their efforts when it came time for the 16-bit era with the release of the Sega Mega Drive, also known as the Sega Genesis. And while the Genesis had superior hardware to both the NES and the upcoming Super Nintendo, Sega knew they needed to compete directly with Nintendo's golden mascot, Mario. The Master System had Alex Kidd as Sega's attempted mascot, but he never really stuck. So Sega put out an internal company competition to come up with character designs. Many designs were submitted, including a lot from Naoto Oshima, a designer on the Phantasy Star series. Some of Oshima's standout designs include a rabbit, a round mustache man in pajamas, and a blue hedgehog, with the initial favorite being the rabbit. Oshima asked programmer Yuji Naka to help collaborate with him on the project, and the two began drumming up ideas for what the game could be. Naka had a fascination with speed at the time, and was interested in capturing the feel of fast cars in a game. This idea of moving fast made the rabbit design the obvious pick. But over time, they realized they needed to have the character turn into a ball-like projectile in order to combine the jump and attack for a one-button design. Going back to Oshima's previous designs, they settled on the hedgehog, as the curved spine gave the illusion of speed, and the team thought it was funny to make a small animal be able to break the sound barrier. The final design was meant to appeal to Western audiences, using numerous influences such as Mickey Mouse for the expressive eyes, Michael Jackson for the shoe design featuring Santa Claus colors, and a get-it-done personality based on then-Governor of Arkansas, Bill Clinton. The character's final name? Sonic the Hedgehog. For the villain, the team ended up returning to a previous hero design they were fond of, the round mustached man, and retooled him to be Sonic's nemesis, Dr. Eggman. When Sega of America got hold of Sonic, they were weary of his reception and certain character choices like his sharp fangs and human girlfriend. SOA assigned Madeline Schroeder and her team to retool aspects of Sonic for the West. She affectionately became known in the office as the Mother of Sonic. Sonic received a softer design to make him cuter, while on the other end Sonic's villain was made more menacing and his name was changed from Dr. Eggman to Dr. Robotnik. With the creation of Sonic out of the way, work began on the game in 1990, and despite being developed in Japan, the game was released a month early in the West on June 23, 1991. Sonic's level design is rather unique compared to traditional platformers, because levels are designed vertically with multiple lanes for Sonic to travel. Typically, the higher lanes have better rewards, and falling down doesn't necessarily mean death, but being put in a less rewarding lane. You also won't die in one hit like most platformers. Instead, you collect rings, and when you get hit, all of the rings explode out of Sonic. If you get hit without any rings, then you die. And players want to try and keep as many rings as possible so they can access the bonus stage. This trippy, colorful dimension is where Sonic bounces around like a pinball and tries to collect one of these 6 Chaos Emeralds. Getting them all unlocks the game's true ending. And that's no small feat, because Sonic 1 is a pretty tough game, and like a lot of games at the time, there's no save. So once you lose all your lives, it's back to the start. The game has 6 zones with 3 acts each. There's really no unifying connection to them, as each zone offers a drastically different look and feel, along with different enemies and environmental hazards. It's worth pointing out that this game looked really good at the time of its release. The game is full of a variety of colors rarely seen in games at that time, and it really makes things pop, and the backgrounds are filled with lots of detail. The game is still great to look at today, and levels like Green Hill Zone are now burned into the collective gaming consciousness, along with the fantastic music. Critically, Sonic the Hedgehog was a success, praising the game's colorful graphics and Sonic's speed. Sega pushed the marketing for the game hard. They cut the price of the Genesis in order to outbeat the Super Nintendo and bundled it with Sonic. When it came time to going head-to-head against Nintendo's Red Plumber, Sega did not hold back.
Gotta go.
Hey, guy, you're the first serious gamer I've seen all morning. Check this out. Brand new 16-bit Super Nintendo with Super Mario World. Wow!
Oh, what's this one?
Oh, this is a Sonic the Hedgehog from Sega Genesis. Hey, look at these radical colors, huh?
Wow, Sonic's fast, too.
No, over here.
I like Genesis, and it costs a lot less.
And it worked. The Sega Genesis outsold the SNES in the United States nearly 2-1 during that holiday season. Sonic had achieved Sega's plan, and for the first time, Nintendo was no longer the dominant console leader. Yet despite Sonic's massive success, heads of Sega were unhappy with aspects of the game's development, such as the length of time spent on programming. Yuji Naka, tired of the internal politics, decided to quit Sega. Meanwhile, Mark Cerny had been hired by Sega to start up a studio in the United States known as the Sega Technical Institute. Cerny gathered numerous talent, including Hirokazu Yasuhara, game and level designer on the original Sonic the Hedgehog. Learning of Yuji Naka's departure, Cerny called up his friend and convinced him to stay behind and work in America. Naka agreed. Nata Oshima, Sonic's lead artist, stayed behind in Japan. With 2 of the 3 leads of Sonic the Hedgehog on the team, it was natural to give STI the sequel. The first thing the team wanted to add was a new main character. Yuji Naka originally conceived a 2-player mode in the first game, but didn't have time to include it, so the feature became top priority for him with the sequel. This led to the creation of Miles Tails Prower. The project was ambitious. The original plan called for 18 zones, and there were even early talks of time travel. However, to meet the 1992 Christmas deadline, the time travel concept was dropped and the number of zones was reduced to 12, cutting levels such as the now infamous Dust Hill Zone. Cultural and language-based issues began cropping up between Japanese and American teammates. The American social norm of treating the work as a simple 9-to-5 job clashed with the Japanese standard that you were supposed to dedicate yourself fully to the project. While this created animosity between members, the team was still able to work smoothly on Sonic 2. Development went up to the very last minute, and unfortunate calls had to be made, such as the cutting of the nearly complete Hidden Palace zone. 13 Japanese employees were flown out to help finish the final weeks of development, with elements being changed days before certification. The game did finish on time and released in Japan on November 21st, 1992, and the United States and Europe 3 days later.
Now, when you buy the Sega Genesis that comes with Sonic 1, you'll get Sonic 2 absolutely free. Sonic 2 handles stubborn stains, embarrassing bald spots, no problem. It even slices and dices, makes thousands of julienne fries. But wait, you can play it too.
Sonic the Hedgehog 2 isn't a drastic change from the original, but it does a lot to improve on it. A brand new spin dash was added, allowing Sonic to build up speed and reach places he might not otherwise. Tails follows Sonic throughout the game, but he doesn't actually change the way you play. He occasionally kills an enemy for you, but mostly just dies or activates a platform you wanted to get on. 2-player mode is a different story though, as Tails can pick up Sonic and fly him around. Stages feel a bit shorter this time, and the zones now only have 2 acts instead of 3, but this is made up with almost double the amount of zones. The stages themselves take better advantage of Sonic's speed throughout, with plenty of wow moments. Sonic 2 was a massive success, with critics praising the game's improvements over the original. In its lifetime, the game has sold over 6 million copies. Sonic 2 is when Sonic started to really blow up. There was merchandise, a comic series, and a TV show where Sonic was voiced by Jaleel White.
If you think it's smart to climb in a dryer, you're really all wet.
A proper sequel wouldn't arrive for a couple years, but Sega kept the franchise going. While Sonic 2 was still in development, a major game was being created for the Genesis add-on peripheral, the Sega CD.
Hey! You still don't have a Sega CD? What are you waiting for, Nintendo to make one?
Sega wanted their Premier series to make the CD a success. Original plans for a simple enhanced port of Sonic 1 or the upcoming Sonic 2 were considered, but it was decided a new game would be created in order to take advantage of the hardware. The project was handed over to Naoto Oshima, lead artist on the first Sonic. Oshima coordinated with Yuji Naka and other members of STI in order to share information and ideas on the two games. Oshima loved STI's idea of time travel, and while that ended up getting scrapped early on in Sonic 2's development, it became the core concept of Sonic CD. Because it was developed around the same time as Sonic 2, Sonic CD doesn't feel like a full sequel to that game. There's no Tails or two-player mode, and the spin dash is in the game, but uses repurposed animations. Time travel is the game's big feature, which allows Sonic to travel between 3 versions of the same stage. Each era looks different, with the future being a technological apocalypse, and the past with more of a natural beauty and pristine ruins. Changes to traps and enemies provide alternate gameplay as well. Finding certain machines hidden in a time zone in each act changes the future and that zone's boss battle, which adds a ton of replay value. Sonic CD also tries to sell the benefits of the Sega CD with added visual flair and this pretty cool intro animated by Toei Animation and Studio Juno, known for their work on Dragon Ball Z. Sonic CD was released in Japan on September 23, 1993, and in the US 2 months later. While the game didn't cause the Sega CD to take off as the company had hoped, the game was received very well, with many calling it the best Sonic game to date. Of course, the true successor to Sonic 2 was still on the way. STI was once again tasked with development of the next main Sonic game. Yuji Naka agreed to work on it only if he could work with the Japanese half of STI, wanting to avoid the tension that arose during the development of Sonic 2 between the Japanese and American team members. Naka got his wish, being promoted to a producer. The Japanese half of STI began work on Sonic 3, while the American half created the spin-off game Sonic the Hedgehog Spinball. Wanting to top themselves, the vision for Sonic 3 was huge, and immediately the team knew such a game wouldn't be possible. In an attempt to prevent the cut content and compromises that plague Sonic 2's development, the decision was made early on to split the game in half and have both parts worked on simultaneously. Like with Tails in Sonic 2, the addition of a new main character, Knuckles the Echidna, was a major focus, this time being a rival for Sonic. 14 zones were planned out and then split up between 2 games, Sonic the Hedgehog 3 and Sonic & Knuckles. Both games were designed to be played as standalone titles, but so that players could experience the full game as intended, Sonic Team left code and data from parts of Sonic 3 and Knuckles in Sonic 3. Using something that they dubbed Lock-On Technology, players could combine the 2 games together, creating the full game Sonic 3 and Knuckles. The team also wanted to add as much value as possible, knowing they were essentially asking players to pay twice for one game. A special patch was created that let players connect with Sonic 2 and play the whole game as Knuckles. Sonic the Hedgehog 3 was released in the US on February 2, 1994, and in Japan, May 27. Sonic & Knuckles was released everywhere that October. Sonic the Hedgehog 3 is peak refinement of the 2D Sonic games. This time you can pick between playing as both Sonic and Tails or just one of them. By the way, Sonic's sprite is redrawn, with subtle changes to his look. Sonic 3 only has 6 zones with 2 acts each, but they are much longer than Sonic 2's. There's more of an attempt with some light storytelling in this one, with Knuckles causing trouble for Sonic and Tails, and each act being connected to each other through cutscenes. Zones now have mini-bosses after the first act, in addition to the usual Act 2 boss. Sonic 3 is also the first game in the series to feature a save system. An interesting note